What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of How Creatives Think. We are super excited to have you with us today. My name is Landon Hook.
I'm Chris Henderson.
And today we are honored to have Bob Boyd with us, who is a very, very accomplished mastering engineer, multiple Grammy Awards, Dove Awards, Juno Awards, is also a fantastic photographer, just an all-around super creative person.
And a good friend of ours, and we are super excited to have him here today. We are here with Bob Boyd, and we are excited to have a conversation with him. Bob's a good friend of mine, and I've known him for quite a while, and really long, in fact.
Yeah.
And got some fun stories and everything else to go through. But we're going to try and dive into the life of Bob and just understand what really makes him tick and what is it that just kind of forces him to constantly be creative. And I mean, we're talking like decades worth of amazing levels of creativity through audio, through video, all kind of stuff. So, Bob, start us off and just kind of walk us through your journey. Where has life taken you? How have you ended up where you're at now? And just tell us about you.
Yeah. So basically, all through, I'll just give you this super quick arc. So all through school, did marching band, and then I went to high school for the performing arts and did jazz guitar and second trumpet and all of that. Then went to college, and I had actually kind of grown a little disenchanted with gigging. They would hire us out when we were in high school, and we would go, and there was this one fateful night. We were outside. It was freezing. It was raining. Couldn't keep my guitar in tune. And I was like, what am I doing? So I was just like, you know what? I'm going to push into recording. And I had started dabbling with just recording myself to a cassette in junior high. And then I would take that cassette and play it back and record myself playing to it and just kind of cascade these cassettes. And of course, the noise was just horrendous. But I just kind of got the bug, and basically that just kind of all of my love of playing and, the 5 years of piano that my mom made me go through that I didn't want to be a participant in. All of that passion for playing kind of got moved into the tech side. And I fell in love with the tech side because it enabled me to do the music that I wanted to. I could connect with my friends, and we could jam and record, and that pretty quickly turned into I was going to go to Nashville for college, and through a series of family events and stuff, didn't do that. But I grew up in small town Alvin, Texas. And they had a 16 and an 8-track, half-inch and 1-inch studio. They had a small room, then they had the big band room, and so I dove headfirst into that, and that led to actually leaving college because I got so busy doing freelance work that I just didn't even look back, and so. Anyway, so it's been a journey. I started working at Second Baptist Church pretty quickly after that, and became director of broadcast audio. And one day, actually, I recorded Chris's band too, which we can get into that at some point. But
how long ago was that? Was the real question?
It was early 90s, probably mid 90s.
Late, no, it was late 90s, something like that, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Man.
Yeah. So,
and you recovered from that, so that's good.
I would have, yeah. I've known Chris for what? Probably almost 20 years now. Yeah, but I would have loved to know mid 90s, Chris.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wouldn't have wanted to.
For sure. Fast forwarding quite a bit, a fellow mastering engineer told me at one point, he was like, you need to talk to Chris Henderson. He's got this incredible EQ called the Michelangelo. And I was like, okay. So I reached out to Chris, not remembering it was Chris from the 90s. And when I reached out to him, he was like, "Bob Boyd, I've been meaning to call you. I live right down the street." I was like, "What?" So anyway, so it turned out to be right down Grand Parkway, and I've made many trips over to Chris's house to pick up new gear. I'm looking at Michelangelo, a Pollock, and an oven right now. So yeah,
a buddy of ours who we're going to interview in the future was relaying one of his favorite stories. And sorry to get off topic, but it just kind of shows the absurdity that is us. We were in the studio doing something. We're working hard on something. I get a call, and he's like, "Who's that?" And I was like, "It's Bob Boyd." And he's like, "Oh, wait, mastering guy?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, I didn't know you know Bob." "Oh, yeah." I was like, "Well, what does he need?" And I said, "Oh, he needs a VCR like right now." And he's like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "And you told him yes?" I said, "Yeah, I got like 3 upstairs. I think my wife made me keep them. So he's going to run over and grab one." and this guy's name's Dave, and he's like, "I don't know what the most amazing part of this story is, the fact that Bob Boyd is up the road and just needs a VCR stat, or the fact that you have 3 that you can let him borrow."
Exactly. I totally forgot about that. I don't even know what that was for.
It just felt completely normal. I don't know.
It's probably
what's so weird about that?
Video my wife wanted me to transfer the kids or something. Who knows? So,
sorry, anyway. Keep going with your story, please.
Yeah. So one, I had been recording bands and doing the tracking and the mixing and all of that, and then never had anything mastered. That I can remember. It was just, making, there was a studio that I worked in Houston, a studio in Pasadena, Texas. And after I got hired at Second, my boss came in and he was like, "Hey, the pastor's kid wants to make a record." And I was like, okay. I didn't know if that was a sales pitch, but it wasn't a great start. And I was like, okay. Anyway, it turned out to be Caedmon's call. And they totally had their stuff down pretty quickly. And that led to tracking, mixing. Then we sent it to Nashville for mastering. And I got it back and was just kind of like, okay, I need to figure this out. Like, what did he do to my mixes? And it was actually a really great kind of first exposure to mastering, because in trying to kind of reverse engineer what he had done to my mixes, because I had that kind of time back then, I learned what I could have done better as a mix engineer and to set the mastering up to win, basically. And so it was really, really insightful, but I fell in love with, honestly, just the minutia of it and the detail and all of that. So that coincided with marriage and having kids. And so I found myself having less and less time to track, and pushed into the mastering thing. Then I was just mixing and mastering. And then about 2006, my mastering schedule had picked up to the point where I was like, I've got to stop mixing, because I would mix a record, blow a week, couldn't master any records. And so I was like, I'm going to push into what I love. So it was great. It was a great decision. So.
Very cool. And so parallel to all of this is the photography, videography journey. Can you kind of walk us through that thing too?
Yeah. So, there was one summer, about 2008, my brother, who lives over in Paris, he went on a family vacation with us, and he had just picked up this Canon 5D, the original Canon 5D. And I felt really bad for him because he paid a lot for that camera. And then 3 months later, the 5D Mark II came out, and that was the one that did video. So
what a legendary camera too.
Right. So, but anyway, he had like a 50 mil on it, and was taking all of these, wide aperture shots of my kids with this depth of field and, out of focus backgrounds. And I was like, I need to figure this out. Like, I want to shoot those of my kids too, And so I picked up a little Canon Rebel, and then that led pretty quickly to a 5D Mark II. And, I haven't looked back. I mean, between, shooting concerts occasionally for artists that I get the chance to work with, or, just family vacations or just whatever. It's just, you were talking about what drives us and stuff. And it's just, it's kind of part, that's really cool. I want to do that. And for me, the flip side of that is it's engaging in tech. And I just, when I can find the intersection of creativity and tech, that's my happy place. So I've talked to other photographers and they're like, yeah, just knowing that you're into mastering and the detail of all of that, like it's no surprise that you kind of gravitated toward cameras as well. So I know a lot of people that are audio engineers that also shoot. So yeah.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of times the stereotype is going to be if you're super detail oriented or even sometimes tech oriented, creativity is not typically going to be your thing. It's going to be, you just get lost in the numbers and the weeds and everything else, and that's your happy place as opposed to producing something super interesting.
Right.
And so I think that's what's so fascinating to me is looking at your photography, videography, and also your mastering. You approach it very technically, but it also screams fun. Like somehow you accomplish both simultaneously.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's just, I think that at the end of the day, that's just what drives me. I mean, Chris, as you know, I went down a rabbit trail testing every possible tube in the oven, and landed on some pretty cool Telefunkens that I got shipped in from Russia. So, beyond bragging rights, whatever, but it sounded cool. And I loved it, like do a print, change the tubes, do another print, and then A-B them. And so, yeah, it was pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's almost like you ask, okay, so what would you be doing on your free time?
Right.
I mean, I don't want to say this out loud, but swapping tubes on mastering and listening to mixes to see how it changes. I remember coming over one time recently, and you had a new record player. And first I was like, of course he does. Like, all right, sure. And you had hooked it up, and you were showing me, you said, okay, you have to listen to this right now.
Yeah.
I said, okay, whatever. And he said, all right, I'm going to pull up Spotify or Tidal or whatever. His Tidal, I think. And you said, I want you to listen to this jazz mix or this kind of old 50s, 60s jazz mix thing. And then I'm going to play it on the record. And I just want you to see if you notice a little bit of a difference. I said, okay, cool. So you played the Tidal one, and then you played the record. And it was like if somebody just radically upended the entire sonic spectrum. The record just blew it away.
Yeah.
And he said, and he just kind of smiled at me. And I was like, how is that even possible? And you're like, I don't know, but I found out because I got the best needle and this, that, and the other. And sure enough, there's a huge difference. It's like every time I'm talking with Bob, there's a new text of a picture that you took with a new lens or camera or something.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's really inspiring. Like what is it about the tech side of it that always keeps drawing you in? Because it does seem to correspond. Like, what is it, the tech that drives the creativity? Like it's a new paintbrush to use, or is it more of the tech enables you to unlock certain things that you've been wanting to?
Yeah, like I think for me personally, I think that it, the new paintbrush analogy is a good one. It's just like, wow, what can I do with this? And I don't know about you guys, because I know y'all both do photography as well, but when I got into the photography side of things, like I said, like late 2008, 2009, somewhere in there, I picked up way too many lenses, way too fast. It was like, what I mean? It's just like, ooh, let's try that. And let's try that, but it was a quick education, and so it's a great toolbox, but it does tend to get a little heavy in a backpack sometimes. So,
well, I mean, it gets heavy, especially when you shoot Leica. Like those things are, it's like, geez, everything's just built like a tank.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I've got the SL3, and I was showing Chris a couple of shots that I had taken of the moon, and it's a 60 megapixel sensor, and it's ridiculous. And then I've got this Sigma 150 to 600 and then I stuck a 2x barrel on that. So I was like at 1200 millimeters, and I was shooting 60 megapixels. And so I just sent Chris a picture with, the back of the screen with my phone, with it zoomed in, 100%. And you literally could just see the craters on the edge.
Yeah.
It was really wild.
It's ridiculous.
Crazy.
It's like zoomed into the point to where when you take a picture, you get a motion blur from the moon itself.
Right.
Like, no joke.
Exactly.
And I'm just looking at it like, Bob, I hate you. How do you do this? Like, I mean, I guess that's what's so fascinating to me. It's almost like, do you feel like to a certain degree, the integration of the art and the tech is a kind of conquering, in a sense, like, ooh, I'm going to conquer this? Or is it more of just a open-ended exploration?
No, I think it's a great question. I think there's definitely an aspect of that. I mean, I've heard, and there's probably some similarity here. I've heard guys that are like into cars, for example. They're like, the fun is the chase, right? It's like you buy the car, but the rush is the chase of the next one, kind of a thing. And I think that's kind of applicable to just probably the way my brain processes tech, is it's just finding a new tool. What all can I do with it? And man, I mean, we are like gas pedal down right now with AI getting into our world. And like, I've got a ridiculous amount of AI capable tools in my plugin box now. So, I had somebody basically say, "Hey, the vocal feels a little low in this one spot," and it was that way in the mix. But I was like, "I got this." So I basically just used an AI tool to lift the vocal in that one section. I've also used the same thing to have it to tell it to focus on the vocals, and then I've done slight re-EQing of the vocals, so that it doesn't, it's not as invasive on the rest of the mix, but it does, it's not perfect, but it does a decent job if you don't overdo it. So
that's an interesting thought with the progression of technology, because I feel like we see that not only in the music recording, mixing, mastering world, but you also see that in the photography side. It moves so quickly. And I would even say with AI, you see it in both of those industries. Yeah. But I think with that, you also see a lot of people, specifically like in the photography industry, you see a lot of people going back to, no, I only shoot film now. That's I only do that. Film's just better. I only do that, which film's great. I have nothing against people who do that. But like you see that, like, I only shoot film now. You see a lot of people in the audio, like, oh no, tape's just better. We record everything on tape. Nothing digital can touch this. Do you have a tendency to like to go to one side or the other, or is it just a combination of these are just creative tools at my disposal, and I love whatever I can get my hands on?
Yeah, I mean, to that point, I mean, yeah, whether it's printing something in the box or printing something through the desk, or most of the time it being kind of a hybrid thing. I mean, I get jazzed about all of it, it's just different textures. And I love I love like dialing something in on the plug-in version of a EQ that I have and just let's compare, and it's interesting. Like, the plug-in tools have come a long, long way, but there are definitely, Chris and I have talked about this so much, but there's definitely times where it'll do a round trip through the desk, and by the time I get it dialed in, you're like, man, this has got a little something special on it. And I think a lot of it is just actually having the analog in the chain, so yeah. But speaking of film, though, I have a very short, funny story. So 2 years ago, my wife and I went to Asheville, North Carolina, which obviously is hurting right now. But we just went in the fall just to hang out, drive around the Smoky Mountains and see the beautiful leaves and, all this kind of stuff. And I was like, you know what? Like, I'm in no rush. I'm just going to shoot film on this trip, right? So I shot a roll through the week. I was taking pictures of landscapes and taking pictures of Darcy in front of these brightly colored trees and all this kind of stuff. And the last night we were there, we were having a beer, and I was like, babe, let me take one more picture. I got one frame left. Let me just take a picture of you real quick. Took a picture and backed out the roll. I had been shooting black and white all week long. And it was
wow.
I was taking pictures of fall leaves and all this kind of stuff. So, they say if one picture is out of focus, it's a mistake. But if they're all out of focus, it's a style. So I guess that was what I was pursuing that week.
Well, at first, I thought you were going to tell me you were using a rangefinder all week, and you realized the lens cap was on or something like that the whole week, and you didn't know or something like that.
Yeah. I've been guilty of that. My kids loved to give me a hard time whenever I accidentally left the lens cap on, because you're right, in a rangefinder you can't see it.
Yeah,
So.
you have no idea.
No,
gosh. That's so funny.
Oh, man.
So, question for you. Going back to the AI thing, because it is infiltrating like every industry.
Sure.
And I'm curious, because when we talk about tech and tools, generally, whether it be in music or photography or art or whatever else, the tech has been supportive, generally speaking, supportive of the artist doing the art, whatever that may be. In other words, I have a new tool, it's going to help me do this quicker, or it's going to help me be able to target this instead.
Yeah.
Is there a point, and this is just me trying to pick your brain here, is there a point where the tools get so advanced that we no longer are useful or in any way important to the process?
So, I mean, yeah, I definitely understand the question. And it's like, can something be quote unquote mastered? I mean, you've got these services.
Well, I mean, in any industry, industry.
Yeah.
The better question may be, can AI be creative?
Oh, gosh. I wasn't technically asking that question, but yeah, that's a fundamental thing that focuses it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would just be a matter of time, honestly. I mean, we're seeing such crazy leaps and bounds with machine learning and I recently saw where like Tesla released a version of full self-driving, and the AI machine learning had gotten to the point where all they had to do was teach the computer, like, this is a successful drive. So like starts, goes through the drive, ends, this was a successful drive. This was a successful drive. And it used to be they had to go, this is a bike, this is a car, this is a truck. And they were trying to model, teach it. But now all they have to do is just show it end-to-end video. And the thing that I read about the update was that they had been able to delete 300,000 lines of code because they had it picked up so successfully on what they were showing it. And I was just like, that's crazy, So,
but does that answer the question of, can AI actually do creativity?
It's a tough question.
It really is. Like how do we even define that?
Yeah, like, is creativity something inherently human, or is it? Because if it's not, then the answer could be yes. But if it is inherently human, then
right.
Well, maybe it's not inherently human. It's also inherently like biological. So biological things, they sometimes don't know where they're going. It just kind of happens, right? They're existing in a quantum state to a certain degree, right? So there's some sort of an uncertainty principle. But with machine learning, it's code, and code is law, right? Or is it?
Right.
I don't like. Right. It's such a fascinating question.
No, I mean, I think I'm still of the mindset where I would say that creativity is a human quality. So I will occasionally go speak to college classes that are wrapping up their audio programs, and they'll bring me in because mastering is the last stage of the whole process, and so they'll have me come in and talk about that and stuff. And I just told them, I'm like, look, you've got these services, you've got Lander, you've got the auto button in Ozone and all these kinds of things. And, I can see where maybe sometimes that has its place from the standpoint that, especially if you're learning, like, take your mix, throw them a couple of bucks or free or whatever it is to get Lander to do it and just learn from it. You know what I mean? But I said, just know that is not the best option. I said, you when you're making your record, you are collaborating with, this guy playing guitar and this guy playing drums, and you hire them, you collaborate with them because of the way that you like them playing their instrument, right? So I'm like, think about mixing or mastering as the same thing. Like, find somebody that you like their work and pursue that collaboration. And that will be infinitely more rewarding than just knowing you uploaded something and it bounced back to you and, whatever. I just think there's a lot of creativity to be had. I mean, that's the thing, is it's like we joke, records are never done. They're just released, right? I mean, we can just go round and round and round. But if 5 different guys master something, it's going to come out 5 different ways. And I think that isn't necessarily for or wrong. It's just, it's creativity. It's like, do you want this to be warm and moody? Do you want this to be the loudest thing ever on radio? So it just depends, and I just really encourage the students to just, like, yes, you have 100 versions of every tool that I grew up with having in analog, but getting your hands dirty and working with people will pay off. Don't get lost in your software.
So in other words, creativity is not a right or wrong proposition. It's a which direction sort of proposition, in which case AI can't actually replace the creativity of a human, because AI becomes just one of trillions of options. Because it's only as good as its inputs, right?
Right.
So it's like, well, I don't know what to do because I can't optimize. And you're like, well, do stuff.
Right.
And
right.
And a human being, it has a different view, and a different human being has another view. And so that's a really interesting perspective. I love that, actually, because at that point, creativity simply is a paintbrush. It's, where do I feel like going? I don't know. Like, what's me? What's my expression in this?
Right.
And an AI is never going to capture that, even if they've been trained on you.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Because, I mean, even we change, right? I mean, if, you might take a mix and master it one way. I experience that sometimes because we live in such a single driven culture where, used to be, they'd go, here's 10 songs. All right, great. Knock it out, put the record together, and then you send it out. And making that a cohesive whole was easier because you had the full context of the record. But now everything is single driven. I will work on singles with artists for 6, 8+ months. And then they'll go, here's the last 3. We're going to put it all together as a record. And it's real easy, especially if that first or second radio single was just supposed to be face against the glass loud, it's real easy to paint yourself into a corner where you're like, oh my gosh, like I can't make the entire record this loud. I just did it for that track because you were begging for it, And so it I think different times you can jump in on the same thing and get very different results because, we're human and it's just whatever hits us in that moment.
I think it's also beyond just the single culture with how much time elapses, but within that time, and Hindi and I have dealt with this with a record that we're finishing up where we've recorded the songs. We're having to figure this out. We've recorded the songs not only over the course of like 2 years, but over the course of like 3 different studios. And so not only are like what Hindi's getting to master is so different, like even the mixes are just different because the tracks are so different. And I mean, I'm working on a record right now for a client that was recorded over the course of 4 years.
Oh wow!
And it's like,
like
it's hard to get cohesiveness from that.
For sure. Well, and sometimes I get the question, they're like, do you think mastering is still important considering there's so many automated tools and stuff like this? And I'm like, honestly, it might be more important than it ever has been, because
I agree.
Because of that single driven culture, we now live in a world where producers, they only want to get in and do like a couple of tracks with an artist, and then they want to move on to the next thing. So this record that we end up putting together is multiple producers who all have their own mix guys. And then you're taking all these different colors and pulling it together and making it sound like they belong next to each other, you know? So yeah, I think it's very important still.
I couldn't agree more. I 100% agree with what you're saying. It's like we are basically trying to make this record not sound schizophrenic.
Right. Right. Exactly.
I would also be interested to hear your thoughts, because going back to what you were saying about how much has changed with technology, especially in the audio world, where you said some of these students you talk to, you have every single piece of gear that I grew up with as a plug-in now, but I grew up in the analog domain. And I think if you look at the shift simply in the way sonically things come to you as a mastering engineer over the course of the years, they've changed. And mastering engineers have to do something different. Hindi and I had this conversation all the time, where if you go back 10, 15, 20, 25 years, it's like audio's changed so much that when you approach mastering, when everything came to you recorded through high quality gear, the mix engineer was an analog mix, it gets to you, it has so much mojo. You try to be as transparent as possible. But when it comes to you after hitting a UA $25 pre and some crap microphone and then mixed through plugins, it's like the mastering engineer is like the last line of please save this terrible sounding track, you know?
Right. Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah, gosh, man, things change so fast. And the crazy thing is like, it's interesting because, again, going back to it being so single driven, like I'm jumping back into old sessions all the time, and I literally will see signal paths that I'm gravitating toward. It's like watching my workflow in reverse, because I'll go back like 3 months and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember when I was doing like that. You know, and it's just so funny to see like the plug-in chain and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And it's just, you know how it is. It's like you find something new and you try it out on everything, you know, and sometimes it sticks and sometimes it doesn't. So,
yeah, but I think that's one of the things that, again, as someone who is creative and long-lasting in the field, like, it's very easy to get dull and dry. This was actually going to be one of my questions. You've been doing this for a bit. You're award-winning in a lot of different areas. And how do you keep doing this in such a way, at such a level, where you don't go, all right, you know what? Autopilot, I'm just ready to collect the checks. And that's not at all what you were like, which means you were atypical in many ways in a lot of industries. It's like, what keeps it fresh? What keeps it constantly going?
Yeah, oh gosh. I think it just kind of gets back for me into just the new paintbrush. You know, it's just finding something to try out. And it's just that's kind of the driving force. It's like every month these days there is a new paintbrush. You know, there's something new to try, something new to experiment with. And I don't know. I just find it's just extremely satisfying to pursue that and find out how to get the most out of everything I possibly can. So
that's very cool. One last thing I wanted to ask before we finish it up, but I had heard a kind of a version of this phrase that I've kind of adopted for my own, and I'm curious to know your thoughts as far as where the music industry as a whole is going. And I guess photography as well, it kind of fits this too, but I'll just do it in the music context. And that is, it seems like over the last 15 or so years, 20 years, heck, even longer than that, humans have been trying to sound like AI made their music. They've been trying to make everything perfect. And AI is trying to sound like human. And I'm wondering, I feel like we've achieved that to the point of much of the stuff we hear these days sounds like it was artificially generated, if we're being honest with ourselves. And much of it is, actually. Do you see music continuing on down this path, especially in the age when AI starts coming in? Or do you see hints of returning more to there's some imperfections in it. Yeah, we just captured some sounds and we're not doing replacement stuff. Like we're trying to be back to the authentic human. Like, do you see that in our future in the industry by and large, or do you think we're just a one-way ticket down the road that we've been going?
Well, I think that we're going to see, we always see pendulum swings in culture, right? So, I think that you can look at some of the not great, harsh 80s pop where synthesizers and sequencers started coming out and drum machines became plentiful and, all this kind of stuff. And that was followed by the 90s grunge. It was like you've got everybody wanting to just get back to the real deal, And so it's also interesting to see how music styles are influenced by tech and achievements and the tools that we use. Like, you go back and you can listen to stuff in the 50s and 60s, and by and large, the instrumentation was pretty stripped down. A lot of the Beatles stuff is really straightforward, right? Because they only had 4, maybe 8 tracks to work with. And then we get into the 70s, and we've got 24-track 2-inch machines, and electric light orchestra can't stack enough vocals. It's like, it's just, we just keep going and going and going. Then the digital reverb comes out, and we get the big 80s on everything, right? And then we get the pendulum swing to grunge, and then auto-tune comes out in the late 90s. Boy bands pop up, right? Because now everybody can be tuned. And it's just interesting to see how it's driven. But I think there's always these pendulum swings, back and forth. And I think that just having real players will always have a place. This is a whole nother topic maybe to debate, but I told my wife one time, I'm like, the problem with the endless scroll, right, is it's had a huge effect on society, right? It's had a huge effect on people's self-esteem. But one of the things that I thought about was people don't have quiet. They don't have time to discover something that they're good at, And I think that's probably one of the things that I feel like, in a way, has kind of been stolen from our kids, is they don't have the time just to kind of think and go, I'll try an instrument, I'll pick up like I had 5 years of piano, like I jokingly said, my mom had made me go through. But I picked up the guitar in junior high, and I was all about it because it was something that I wanted to do. And I don't know if that ever would have happened if I was just on Instagram, just constantly scrolling. The social media thing is just such a necessary evil, because it's like we all try to post to try to keep people somewhat up to speed on some of the things that we're doing, and it's kind of a street cred thing and all this. But yet I also find myself, it's definitely work. I don't enjoy being on Instagram and Facebook and stuff like that like I used to. I kind of miss the original Instagram, where it was just simple pictures, Everything's very video driven now, which is whatever. But anyway, I wonder sometimes if our youth like have a chance to discover that they're absolutely incredible at something. So
finding creativity and the ability to be quiet within yourself.
Yeah.
Kind of the opposite
which is not something you find in today's world.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Doom scrolling to creativity, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Dramatic transformation.
So
yeah, that's a great thought. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to get a debate from me. So
Yeah.
appreciate
I'm
it.
now realizing that if we take this video and you fast rewind it, you're going to see this mic having just sunk the whole time. It's down here out of the frame.
Well, it's one of those things that
That's
sometimes you just got to have a little humanity in there, right?
Exactly.
Bob, thank you so much.
Yeah, man.
Really,
My
really
pleasure.
appreciate it. And
thank you.
this
Thanks
has
for
been
being
really fun. I've enjoyed it a lot, and thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, absolutely.